You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. LSU Ole Miss week. It's always interesting, if nothing else. Lane Kiffin earlier this week kind of hinted at Matt Corral maybe not being healthy enough to play. Is this just a smokescreen?
You know what, Matt? I don't know what it was. Matt Corral's going to play. I think Matt has practiced all week. It's interesting. Lane Kiffin never talks about injuries. I'll give you an example. Jonathan Mingo has a broken foot, had foot surgery 2 weeks ago. If I were to ask Lane Kiffin at Monday's press conference, Lane, I was wondering if you could give me an update on Jonathan Mingo, his answer would be, we hope he can play this week. That would be his answer, knowing full well that Jonathan's not playing. So on Monday, he gets a fairly innocuous question from a local writer about Matt. You know, how's he feeling, I think was the question. Almost to the point where I wonder if the question was planted. And, that happens in press conferences. It's weird, but it does. And I don't know if it happens down there, but everything possible everything weird media happens here. So he gets that question, and I expected him to say something along the lines of, we don't talk about injuries, and, I expect him to play, or we expect him to play, or we hope he plays, which is the standard answer. Instead, he's talking about how, we don't talk about injuries, but, and he goes into the answer that he gave about, Matt really got hit a lot. It's just not sustainable or whatever. And, hope he plays, but right now it's not looking good. And so I don't really know what that is. I have a theory. Lane and Matt have a really close relationship. They are, at this point, more than coach and player. I think they're genuinely friends. They're both California guys, kind of laid back, kind of second chance guys, if you will. And I think that Lane is trying to create a narrative to bolster Matt Corral's Heisman chances. A narrative of, on CBS when Vern Lundquist and Gary Danielson and all that, when they find three storylines and spend 4 hours talking about it. One of them will be, Matt Corral heroically going against LSU on this Saturday afternoon, trying to get Ole Miss to 6-1 for the first time in, I don't know, however long. And I think that's what it is. Now, that being said, Matt got hit a bunch. And I do think he got hurt a little bit near the end of that Tennessee game. And, I don't think that running 30 times a game is sustainable. And I don't, the rest of it, I'm not really sure what the motivation for it is. It was odd, but, when you cover Lane Kiffin each week, there's a lot of subliminal messaging. He learned a lot from Nick Saban in that regard. And so maybe it was a message to his team. Maybe it was a message to somebody else. I just don't know.
Neal, the one thing we do know is that the bugaboo Matt Corral had a year ago was the interceptions, and that is essentially gone. 14 touchdowns, 1 interception through 6 games. What is different?
Well, he's playing beautiful football. If you go back and look at the interceptions last year, 6 came in one game in Fayetteville, 3 came in one half there in Baton Rouge. So that's 9, and I realize that counts. But there were some signs last year that he was getting over it. He just makes really good decisions. He's very comfortable in the offense. He and Lane and he and Jeff Levy have a great relationship, the offensive coordinator here. He makes very good decisions. He's an incredibly athletic kid. He's got a big-time arm. He's very smart. I've said this before. We have a tendency in our profession, our field, whatever, to stick to narratives. And when Matt first got to college, he was pretty immature, and he was pretty hot-headed, and I think he was a little insecure, and all of those things. And he had a tendency to try to throw 7 touchdown passes every time he threw the ball, and that'll get you in trouble. And he's grown up, like you hope that your kids do when they go to college. And he's much more mature now. He'll take the check down. If you drop 8, he will just pick you apart underneath. And what has happened over the course of the year a little bit until this last game when he had all of his receivers hurt, defenses they would start games dropping 8, playing a lot of make him beat him underneath, hoping he would make a mistake, and then he didn't. And they got frustrated and they started bringing pressures, and when they did, that's when Lane Kiffin's at his best, and they get one-on-one matchups, and the kid can make every single throw, Matt, and they would pick people apart. Even in the game where Ole Miss lost handily to Alabama, Ole Miss's offensive line was terrible that day. They couldn't get anything going in the passing game. But Matt Corral didn't make a mistake that day. He didn't force one throw. He kind of just kept going, kept plugging. And I thought, and I talked to a couple of NFL guys who said the same thing. That was a day, even though Ole Miss lost by 3 touchdowns, that was a day where he really raised his stock because he's starting to show the NFL people that he understands completely the value of the football. He's really only tried to force one throw this year, and sure enough, it got picked. But even that one was just he was running out of bounds, kind of desperate, trying to make something happen in a game where the team was truly on his back.
Neal McCready's with us, rebelgrove.com. So you mentioned Mingo being out and just the general lack of health in that Ole Miss offense. Can you run through who's out, who's available for Saturday they're expecting?
Yeah, so Mingo's out. The starting tight end, Chase Rogers, is out. Now, Casey Kelly's back. Chad Kelly's little brother, who played really well late last season and then had a skiing accident in January or February where he tore his ACL and tore something else. And he's back, and he actually played really well in Knoxville. So that cancels out Rogers to a degree. Rogers is a really good blocking tight end, and they miss him a lot in the running game. Braylon Sanders, we don't know. I was told he's week to week, which means probably he's going to try to give it a go. He tried to give it a go in Knoxville, and he just wasn't ready, and they got him out of there. So, maybe they expedited his return by not forcing the issue in Tennessee. But I don't know, and I think he's really important to their offense because he's a guy who can take the top off the defense. LSU fans probably remember him. He had a big second half in Baton Rouge last year before he got injured in the fourth quarter of that game. Jerry Neely's back. They're asking more of him. So far, he hasn't given it to him. I thought Monday was interesting. Lane Kiffin kind of called him out, really challenged him. They're missing at least one offensive lineman in Caleb Warren. He's out. His backup, Jordan Rhodes, transfer from South Carolina, he left the Tennessee game fairly early and did not return. I don't know his status. I think he's doubtful. So they're down a couple of linemen, and look, they're super private on injuries. There might be more.
What about defensively, Neal? I thought with DJ Durkin, this team would be better defensively than they've shown here of late. What gives?
There's a talent deficiency up front. That's the big thing. Sam Williams is playing a lot better at defensive end. He's got, 6 sacks or so. He's really starting to play well. That helps them. They don't have that dominant defensive lineman, defensive tackle that you sort of need in a 3-man front to really make it work. Jarrell Poe, the former Ole Miss nose tackle, was on my show today. He and T-Bob Abear have been going back and forth on Twitter all week. It's been kind of funny. But Jarrell made the comment, and it's funny. He said, Ole Miss needs more ass up front. And they do. They just don't have that big guy that eats 2 or 3 blockers that forces – offenses to have to do more difficult things. They're better at linebacker. Chance Campbell, the Maryland transfer, has been terrific. They got Jake Springer, the safety, back last week. He'd missed every game since the first one, and I thought he made a tremendous difference for them in Knoxville. They're better, Matt. It's like I told you they would be. I mean, before the season, I think you asked me, are they going to be better on defense? And I said, yes. But now how much better? And it's kind of been what I thought. They went from 127 or 117 or whatever the heck they were a year ago to, I don't know where they are now, 60, and that's a huge jump, but it's not, it doesn't make you an elite SEC team by any measure defensively, but I do think they're getting better. They're getting some guys back. That's helped. Mark Robinson has improved at linebacker. He's starting to give them a steady guy to go along with Chase Campbell in the middle, and So there are some signs of progress there, no question. But look, they're still a team, and it's one of the things I'm really interested in Saturday. If LSU's figured it out from a run blocking standpoint, and it certainly looks like they have, I'm not positive Ole Miss can line up and stop that. You know, so that's what I'm really interested to watch, because so far this season, when a team has said, "Hey, we're going to run it right at you," Arkansas, Alabama, they couldn't stop it. They did a much better job against Tennessee in that regard last week. So we'll see.
Neal, the line is 9.
Too high.
I'm not asking you to be an odds maker, but yeah. What's your thought there? Okay.
I don't know. You know, I think the LSU effort in Lexington probably still sticks in the minds of odds makers a little bit. You know, I mean that wasn't exactly inspirational up there. I hope I don't offend anybody when I say that. I feel certain I won't.
There were plenty of people upset. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it wasn't that long ago. I'm sure that resonates to a degree. You know, and then I think there's a tendency with Ole Miss, because of how well Corral has played and because of their offensive numbers at times this year, to just assume against that LSU defense, which has struggled last week against Florida, that Ole Miss will have its way offensively. And, you know, if they were healthy, I might agree with that. And then, you know, it's an emotional day in Oxford. They're going to have a huge crowd, and it's Eli Manning Day, and they're retiring his jersey and putting his name in the end zone, and you know, all of those things. So I don't know. I mean, if I were an odds maker, I would have said it more like Ole Miss -3.5, Ole Miss -4.5. You know, 9 just feels like a big number. I mean, there's no indication watching Ole Miss that they're ready to line up against an SEC team and just, I mean, not name Vanderbilt or South Carolina and just pop them. I mean, they can win games. They beat a really good Arkansas team. Arkansas is good, man. I'm going to tell you that. And they beat a good Tennessee team. But, you know, LSU's a good team too. And 9-10 points just feels like a bunch.
Man, they got Manning spray painted in the end zone. What's that vibe going to be like this weekend, honoring Eli?
You understand this because you are a guy who gets it. There are a lot of people out there that probably don't fully understand what Eli Manning meant to this town, to the state, to the school, to home values here in Oxford. I mean, you know, when I first moved here in 2008, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing little kids running around with New York Giants jerseys. I mean, he's a big deal, and Eli comes back here a lot, and he is a really down to earth guy. People love him. He meant so much. His teammates love him. He pretty humble, not very pretentious, none of those things. It's a big deal, you know. I mean, they were going to do this last year, and then the pandemic, of course, and I think it'll be a special moment for that program and for that fan base. And you know, he came awfully close to doing something at Ole Miss that a lot of people think can't be done, and that's win an SEC title. I mean, they were right there with LSU in 2003, and you know, that was a special season for people. And then he was the first pick in the draft, and he's always come back, and you know, all of that stuff. And he happens to have a pretty highly recruited nephew that will be here as well. And, you know, I'm sure that plays into some of this as well. But look, Eli, whether Arch Manning comes to Ole Miss or not, Eli is one of the most popular players and famous players that's ever played here. And he absolutely deserves to have his jersey retired.
Neal McCready, rebelgrove.com, on Twitter at Neal McCready. I'll give him a follow. Always great to chat, man. Enjoy the game. We always appreciate a couple of minutes.
Matt, always great to talk to you, buddy.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.